Workplace conflicts are normal occurrences in offices because we're all different, and the workplace is probably the largest cooking pot of varying personalities, characters, beliefs, values, and ideologies. So for me, it's not really about not having conflicts, but more about one, reducing their occurrences, two, knowing how to manage them when they do occur, and three, being emotionally intelligent enough to manage yourself properly. So it's pretty awesome to have an experienced mediator as my guest today. Lolia Deal-Oligbo is an accredited attorney mediator with the Lagos Multi-Door Courthouse and a mediation advocate with the Standing Conference of Mediation Advocates UK. She's the founder and principal partner at Mitali Legal Practice, a full-service law firm with specialties in commercial law and mediation. She's also a facilitator and trainer with Mitali ADR, where she conducts training in the areas of workplace conflict management for organizations, companies, and SMEs. Welcome, Lolia.
Thank you.
Each time I try and pronounce your name, I'm like, okay, I hope I'm not getting it wrong.
No, you got it right. Yes, Lolia.
Awesome. So yeah, let's delve right in. What defines a workplace conflict?
So workplace conflict is basically any dispute or disagreement that occurs between people in a workplace setting. It can be between co-workers, it can be between an...
Firstly, apologies for the break in transmission. You do know we're talking about workplace conflict. So in this instance, it was conflict between technology and human beings, but we resolved it. So thank you for staying with us. So I'm going to go back to my second question that I'd asked Lolia. Workplace conflicts, can they be positive or negative?
So yes, they can be looked at as having benefits. And when I say benefits, it can be productive in the workplace if it is dealt with properly. So you want to manage the conflict from beginning to end and get it efficiently resolved in order to have those benefits play out, which are like having, stronger relationships.
Okay.
Employees that go through conflict together end up working better together. So you've got the collaboration because they were able to deal with their conflict together, come with problem-solving abilities as well. It also benefits the organization as well as a whole when they're able to pinpoint certain conflicts that identify issues in the workplace. The organization can address those issues and have it resolved and improve on it so that it resolves whatever conflicts that may come from it later on in the future. So yes, you have benefits from workplace conflict, but there are also disadvantages to it.
Okay.
So you can look at things like where if it's not dealt with properly from beginning to end, then it can cause major issues such as mental health problems because of the stress and tensions that it causes in the workplace. It can cause mental health issues. It can cause physical health issues. It can cause a high level of resignation from the office. It can also bring about, absenteeism, a lot of sick leave, people leaving because they're stressed out in the workplace. So if it's not managed properly, it can have its negative effects. But on the plus side, with the benefits, it does have its benefits as well when managed properly.
So I'm going to ask you two questions. One, would you say it's okay not to shy away from conflict? And two, what are the main causes of conflict in the workplace?
Okay, so answering the first question, conflict is inevitable. It's as old as time, as old as man. It's been there from the genesis of time. So it's not something you can shy away from. We're all different people. We have different personalities. We have different backgrounds, cultural upbringing. So that will naturally bring about a clash. It's how you resolve the conflict that makes you a better person at the end of the day. And that's where you benefit from the existence of conflict.
Okay.
And with regards to the second question, if you remind me again.
Which was what are the most common causes of conflicts in the workplace?
Oh, so one of the most common causes of conflict in the workplace is communication. Where there's no proper communication, of course, messages can be misinterpreted and assumptions can be made, and that's just one of the major causes of conflict in the workplace, where people just don't understand each other because communication isn't effective or clear.
So you see, communication seems to have become a buzzword over the last few years. It's always been there, but in my mind, it's suddenly become a buzzword. So can we even break down what we're saying when we say communication?
So when we're talking about communication, you're talking about it being effective enough that the other person has a clear understanding of what you're saying. So in communicating, you're making sure that everything is clear, the other person has a good understanding of what you're communicating, not just in verbal communication, but we're also looking at written communication as well, because we're in the workplace environment. So you have emails, you have other written forms of communication that need to be crystal clear in what message you're trying to pass across.
Does body language have anything to do with this?
Body language has a lot to do with it as well. I was going to say that as well. Active listening is a major part of communication, because you're not always going to be the one talking. You also need to give the other party a listening ear. You need to listen to what the other person is saying in order to respond properly as well. And then asking the right questions. If you don't have a clear understanding of what the person is saying, then knowing the right questions to ask in order to get a better understanding.
Okay, got it. So are there other factors that cause conflict in the workplace outside of communication?
Well, yes, you have unresolved issues. People coming to work with their outside baggage.
I was going to ask what you meant by unresolved issues.
So, yes, people coming to work with their problems from home, their personal issues, not leaving it at the door, but bringing it into the workplace. And of course, that affects their correspondence with people, their interaction with their coworkers. A lot of people don't know how to control their emotions. So there's also the issue of emotional intelligence, where people aren't in control of their emotions, and they let all of that out to their colleagues and stuff like that. So unresolved issues also causes...
Okay, so communication and unresolved issues.
Yeah.
How do we then navigate around these things?
Well, learning how to resolve conflicts properly. So you need to be able to identify what is the problem really, what is the crux of the issue here? What is at the root cause of the problem? What has caused the conflict? So identifying the issue is first and foremost important. Then being able to communicate with the person, call the person who you're having this conflict or, dispute with, and communicate properly with them. Let them know, not assume that they know, but let them know clearly, what the problem is and where you need, what your interests are and why you need the problem resolved. And then you look at things like common ground. When you're having this conversation and you're listening to the other person and you're speaking as well, being open in communication, you look at issues like factors like common ground. What are the things that we can agree on? And then what are the issues that we need to address? So then how do we negotiate those issues? You want to come to a compromise. So how do we navigate that area? And that's where your problem solving abilities come in as a person as well. Being able to find a solution to that problem and then implementing the solution.
Okay, so that leads me to my next question, which is, are there any skills that one needs to have to be able to, I don't know whether it's minimize conflict or resolve conflict, or I don't
navigate, resolve. Yeah, so there are several skills. I could go into a lot of this is what we train people, with at Matil ADR. We train them on how to use these skills in order to resolve conflict on their own without resorting to adversarial, solutions. But with regards to answering your question, communication skills, like I said before, is a big plus. If you're able to communicate effectively, then it helps you navigate through conflict easier and get a more effective resolution. Also, problem-solving skills is a big plus. If you're able to come up with solutions quickly that is mutually beneficial to both parties, not just yourself, but to the other person involved as well, then you get a better resolution and a more effective outcome as well. You also have emotional intelligence, like I said before, knowing how to hone in on your emotions and have control, self-control over that, not let them run wild and, let the conflict get out of hand, but being able to rein that in and, resolve the conflict better also is another essential skill.
Okay, so the skills you've mentioned all sound wonderful, but let me paint a scenario. Organization, different levels of education, different levels of exposure, different types of personalities, yeah? Superiors, subordinates, all of those different things. And you're saying to these people, some of them may be the security staff, the ground staff, for example. They don't necessarily understand what you mean by emotional intelligence. They don't necessarily have a high level of problem solving skills. They don't necessarily have a high level of communication skills because they're grassroots potentially. But then they will still find themselves in conflict with people who are possibly better educated, better exposed, or even vice versa. How do you navigate through that?
Okay, so when dealing with subordinates in the workplace, if you're a superior, if you're a manager and you have an issue with, for example, you just said a security guard or a cleaner in the workplace, you'd want to be, as much as you're staying professional, you also want to be fair. You want fairness to come through. You don't want it to look like you're lording your position as a manager over the subordinate. So getting a good time, identifying a good time and place to have this talk, so to speak. I wouldn't call it a meeting, but a conversation with this person is important. You want to be able to identify a good time where you can address the issues, in context, and also not be interrupted or, have any disruptions during that process. Through that, you're allowing the person to also speak, to have that communication, conveyed, giving them that opportunity to come from their own perspective, speak about what they feel regarding the conflict, if it has been identified, and also you giving them that active listening ear, listening to their problems, so they feel that there is a fairness in the process.
Okay.
And of course, being able to identify specifically what the problem is. If it's a behavioral issue, you want that to be well, detailed. You don't want to just gloss over it because you feel you don't want to nitpick on what they've done, but you want to still, in the box of fairness, still identify whatever behavioral issues need to be identified or resolved, rather, and then, follow up with the person. So even when you've come to a conclusion that this is how we're going to resolve this conflict or this issue, you still want to be able to follow up with the person later on. If it's a behavioral issue and they're having challenges with it, how can you support them as a superior in the workplace? Do they need training? Do they need counseling? So you look at other ways to support them, not just having that conversation directly at them, but also providing a means of support in order to help them be more effective and efficient in the workplace.
Okay, so what if the conflict is with your superior?
So when it's the reverse, similar, sort of steps you would take. You wouldn't address it in a team meeting, and say, I have an issue with you, my manager. No, you would probably send an email or try and get in touch to say, when can we have a meeting? Because you're trying to, create a convenient time and place to have this conversation. Obviously, speak about what you come prepared to the meeting. Speak about what your issues are. And obviously have an active listening ear to hear your superior as well from their own perspective. You apply your problem-solving skills because you want to be able to resolve this issue. Don't be defensive or, don't be defensive or aggressive through the process. And always remain respectful because this is your superior. Through the process, remain respectful, remain professional. And when you get to a conclusion where you've been able to find a resolution, follow up with an email, document, let the email identify what was discussed and then document it for future purposes.
Okay, that sounds really, really, really helpful. So to sum up, can you maybe give us an easy to follow 5-step guide to resolving conflicts in the workplace? Something that somebody like myself can take away and say, okay, whenever I have a conflict, these are the steps I'm going to follow. Doesn't
Okay.
have to be 5, but
Well, first of all, you want to identify the problem, the crux of the problem, the root cause of the issue or whatever it was that caused the conflict. Secondly, you want to communicate. You need to speak to the person, whoever it is you have this conflict issue with. Let them know how you feel. Don't work on assumptions or, guesswork. Let there be clear communication. So you're actively listening as well to the other person and seeing where their own perspective is with regards to the problem that you have at hand. Also identifying common ground. That helps with progress. If you're able to identify that, okay, both parties are have similar interests on this particular issue, then it gives the resolution progress to move forward. And then obviously wherever you identify your challenges, you negotiate with each other. So the fourth one is negotiation.
Okay.
Negotiating on and compromising, coming to a compromise. How can we, on these issues that we don't agree on, how can we come to a compromise and find a resolution to move forward on? So by the time you come to a compromise, you're able to figure out a plan of action, then you implement, which is where you implement your action. How do we make, our work through this conflict? How will we get better at relating with each other? Whatever the problem was in the first place, how do we get through it successfully? So I'll identify it again. So first of all, you identify the cause of the problem.
The cause of the problem.
Or the conflict. Secondly, you communicate.
Communicate.
Yeah. Thirdly, you find common ground.
Find common ground. And it can be common ground in anything.
It can be common ground in relation to
the
what
conflict.
Yes, what you
Okay.
guys are conflicting about or conflicted about rather. And then fourth is negotiating or coming to a compromise.
Negotiate and compromise.
And then the fifth one is implementing
Implement.
it. So what is the plan of action? Let's implement it and see how successful we are.
And then do you now come back? Do you put a timeline to it and come back and assess?
There's no restriction as to how it works. It's all down to the two parties involved and how they're able to maneuver it at their own pace. So there's no restriction on how timelines or anything like that.
Awesome. This has been short and sweet, and technology has tried to bring conflict.
But we resolved
But we
it.
made it. We resolved it.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lolia.
Thank you so much for having me.
This has been actually really, really good.
Yes, it has.
I've got so many examples of conflicts that I've always stumbled through resolving sometimes. So this personally has been very, very helpful.
That's good. Glad
Thank
to hear
you.
that. Glad
Thank
to
you
hear
so
that.
much. So I hope, like me, we've all learned a thing or two. Certainly the 5 steps that have been identified. I think this has been really, really awesome. And once again, thank you for bearing with us whilst we had a break in transmission. Helen, I was going to say John's not back till August. Helen and Fumi and I are going to very, very quickly round off the show. So stay with us for a few more minutes. Thank you.